Welcome to Fool You, where you get to listen to me give bare-bones lectures and rants on literature and history. It's the perfect channel for you if listening to the ravings of a disjointed skull who's seen too much sounds interesting to you. I'm your instructor, poor Professor Yorick, and that is the only Hamlet joke you are allowed to make. Trust me, over the centuries you will not invent one I've not heard 100 times already. And no, I will not read the comments just to confirm your lack of creativity. For our first lesson, we're going to take a look at American novelist Nathaniel Hawthorne's magnum opus. The Scarlet Letter captured the readers in its day with both its superb writing and striking visuals, the titular mark being the most famous. It's still recognized and referenced to this day. Many people wonder if the characters and events are based on real people. The answer is, it's complicated. Today we're going to discuss some people that almost certainly influenced him. William Prynne, the English Puritan polemicist, the Puritan American colonial Elizabeth Payne, as well as the Puritan American colonial Elizabeth Payne. Let me explain. There's only one thing we know for sure. Nathaniel Hawthorne saw a large A on the grave of one Elizabeth Payne at a graveyard he frequented while living and working in Boston, the King's Chapel burial ground. However, if you look at the grave, it's obvious the A is not a mark of shame. Indeed, quite the opposite. It's a heraldic mark, as evidenced by the lions. And while that reaches the end of what we know for sure, locals in the area believe he drew more. Far more. And they have strong reasons for it. You see, there was another Puritan woman named Elizabeth Payne living around the same time guilty of sexual sin. Just not adultery. For those of you who may not be familiar with the, let's say, ins and outs of Christian sexual morality, adultery is when an already married person has sex with someone other than their spouse. An unmarried person who engages in sex is guilty of the sin of fornication, which is still scandalous, especially in Puritan culture, but less so than adultery. After all, you can't break a vow of faithfulness to your spouse if you don't have a spouse. Even in the Old Testament, while the punishment for adultery was death by stoning, for both parties, by the way, though due to misogynistic application, often only the woman was stoned, the punishment for fornication, for the standards at the time, was incredibly light. Congrats, you're now married to that person.
Hooray!
We know that the Elizabeth Payne referenced in court records for the trial was guilty of fornication and not adultery because she was classified as a spinster who had a baby. At the time, a spinster just meant a woman who was old enough that they were expected to have already married, not that they were actually very old. Also, just like Hester in the book, we don't know the identity of the baby's father, presumably because she wouldn't say. But while the fact that she was a fornicator was undeniable, we wouldn't even know that about her if not for the much more serious crime that she was brought to trial over. The child she had out of wedlock died, and she was brought up on murder charges. But when the trial concluded, she was only found guilty of what we would today call manslaughter or third-degree murder. They found her liable through neglect, but they did not find her guilty of deliberately causing the child's death, and she was given 20 lashes and fined. Unfortunately, we don't know the evidence presented. The baby died, that is known without a doubt because they found the body. But court records do not specify the suspected cause of death, whether that was starvation, exposure, or otherwise. We do know that the baby was incredibly young, still in its first year, probably only a few months old, and we also now know that SIDS is a thing, as is the puritanical prejudice against single mothers. So, there are three possible things that could have happened. One, Miss Payne could have been innocent, and in addition to the heartbreak of losing her child without a known cause, was wrongfully convicted for its death and wrongfully lashed for it. The second is that in shame or despair, she was actually guilty as charged of deliberately killing the baby, possibly trying to hide the fact that she even had one, which was a thing. But this couldn't be proven, and so they chose to instead find her guilty of causing the child's death purely by neglect. And then third, it is quite possible that she really was just a really bad mother who neglected her child and accidentally killed it. Now, pretty much ever since the novel was published, locals have been trying to say that the Elizabeth Payne who belongs to this grave marker and the Elizabeth Payne that lived this unfortunate life are the same person. But we know that's not possible, because records also show that the Elizabeth Payne on the tombstone was married to one Samuel Payne for 20 years, with whom she had 6 children by this child's death, and the A is heraldic. Therefore, it cannot be the inspiration. Alone, this would be true. But let's remember the whole reason Hawthorne visited the graveyard was to get ideas about people who had lived in the area. It's not hard to imagine that seeing the heraldic A on the gravestone of someone's name who didn't start with an A, Nathaniel Hawthorne simply curiously decided to do some digging. And if he did research for the name Elizabeth Payne, he certainly would have stumbled across this other Elizabeth Payne who had this very tragic history. Now, this is just my own original thinking, but my guess is that locals and scholars have just been talking past each other. The scholars know that the gravestone for the Elizabeth Payne that the locals keep referencing can't be the same person, and so they don't listen at all. Likewise, because the locals are so determined to have the Elizabeth Payne who very likely did inspire Nathaniel Hawthorne be the same Elizabeth Payne that is referenced on this tombstone, they're not getting listened to at all. Again, I can't prove this, but I'm going to guess that Nathaniel Hawthorne probably just did some research on the name, stumbled across two women with the exact same name, one who had a really interesting history, the other who had a really interesting mark, and decided to take these two separate women, but who shared the same name, into a single person. After all, writers are known for their imagination, and it doesn't take a whole lot of imagination to go, Puritans were known for branding people with their sins. What if this unfortunate woman who had this scandal was forced to wear this distinctive A that the other bears in death? Again, there's no proof, but it's incredibly plausible, and it reconciles both sides. We may now have an explanation of how the inspiration of Hester Prynne, bearer of the large scarlet A, came from a single name but two distinct people. So now let's move on to the inspiration of her sadistic husband, Roger Prynne, who went by Chillingworth for most of the novel. He was most likely inspired by the infamous Puritan provocateur William Prynne. William Prynne, unlike Roger, never married, and if you read about his life, it's not hard to imagine why. He was basically a walking red flag. When he wasn't busy trying to put an end to the theater and every other form of entertainment or enjoyment, he was busy lobbying for the government to punish all moral and religious offenses, only his, of course, and trying to get those who had different views on the proper way to worship the same God as him imprisoned or executed. He was so zealous in this pursuit, he actually would be literally branded with not just one, but two letters on his face. SL for seditious libel, and that was in addition to having bits of his ears chopped off. He would eventually get his revenge by orchestrating the imprisonment and execution of the former Archbishop of Canterbury, William Laud, for supposed treason. And while Laud's own religious intolerance won him a lot of enemies in addition to Prynne, no one could actually find anything treasonous he did, even with Prynne strongly suspected to be tampering with witnesses so that they would give unflattering testimony. In the end, they had to get a bill of attainder to pronounce Laud guilty without having to do that, pesky thing of proving it in a trial. Wonder why no one wanted to marry this charmer. While the branding with letters for their respective sins are the only thing that Hester and William Prynne share in common in their lives, the thematic inspiration as her husband for Roger is undeniable. William Prynne was married to his religious views, including using the state to punish religious offenses. In a way, Hester was also married to Puritan legalism, though not willingly. She is at the mercy of her Puritan community that is living the dream of William Prynne. If the church is the bride of Christ, a Puritan commune would be the bride of William Prynne. And for Hester Prynne, this is a very abusive marriage. And when her literal husband Roger shows up, he is unrecognized due to his altered appearance, much like William's appearance was forcibly altered. He does not stop the Puritan crowd from punishing Hester, nor does he even pity her. And in keeping with William Prynne's desire to punish himself any who disobeyed the religious views that he held, he has Hester hide his identity so that he can track down her lover and exact his own torturous punishment. So did the exact events of the Scarlet Letter ever happen in real life? No. But there is a lot of evidence that Nathaniel Hawthorne drew a lot of inspiration from 2 or 3 real people and used them as the foundational elements for the story. Real people similar to Roger and Hester were known to the author. In the end, the story of the Scarlet Letter is not historically real, but it remained true to the biographies and histories that inspired it. If you enjoyed this lesson, the good news is Fool You never closes registration. Just hit the subscribe button and you'll be notified when class is next in session. Classes are open to the public, so be sure to bring your friends along. Until next time, Memento Mori.